Hello. You may be familiar with the Camino de Santiago, the ancient pilgrimage route to Compostela in northern Spain. But did you know that England has its own Camino? A route steeped in medieval history, winding through Roman ruins, cathedral cities and countryside pubs. Join me as I walk the English Camino, from the ancient abbey in Reading to the port of Southampton, the first stage of a medieval pilgrimage to Santiago. Our journey starts here, outside the remains of Reading Abbey. It's an appropriate place to begin because legend tells us that the hand of St James himself was once held in this abbey. Alas, it's long gone, along with most of the abbey itself. From here we're going to be walking all the way to Southampton, where medieval pilgrims would have looked for a boat to take them to Spain for the onward journey. And there's going to be a lot to see along the way. Not just the landscape, but history as well. This is not just a walk, it's a story waiting to be told. In fact, our journey starts before we leave Reading. I've picked up my pilgrim passport, which I'll be getting stamped along the way. And my first stamp is at the shrine of Our Lady in Caversham, which has been a pilgrim destination since the Middle Ages. And as you approach the abbey, look out for this mural, one of a series that will eventually mark the route of the English Camino. But now we're setting off on our 110-kilometre trek to Southampton, looking out for these scallop shells that waymark the route. The beginning of the walk is watery, with canals and weirs, but there are small paths and woodland too. Now we come to our first historic site along the route. This is the Roman town of Silchester, a well-preserved area with a large amphitheatre and substantial remains of the city walls. It's a reminder that people have been walking this way for centuries, that even our medieval ancestors would have regarded this as an ancient path. A little further along, we come to the church of St James in Bramley. In fact, you'll discover that St James crops up quite a few times along this route. But the notable thing about this church is its rather fine medieval wall paintings. We stop to get another pilgrim stamp here. Carrying on through some more woodland, then past fields of ripe corn, and a bit of a change here where we pass by a golf course. We're experiencing a tremendous variety of scenery. You can tell that it's August, and now we're starting to get the sweeping views in the distance. Here we have another historical curiosity, the old Oxdrove Road. This was once a path where medieval herders would drive cattle to market. A long straight road with occasional startling views across the South Downs. Coming into New Alresford, this was one of my favourite bits, passing by large expanses of watercress beds, then stopping at the Bush Inn before joining the River Itchen. Now for a historical interlude as we approach Winchester, starting with the place where King Alfred the Great may, or may not, be buried. And then we come to Winchester's magnificent cathedral, itself a place of pilgrimage. Behind the cathedral is the Pilgrims' School, named after the medieval Pilgrims' Hall that once stood here. And a little further on is the remains of the old Bishop's Palace. Now this is one place you won't want to miss, the Hospital of St Cross. The oldest charitable institution in the country, it's still an almshouse, but visitors can buy a ticket to look around. and walkers on the English Camino can claim a portion of the wayfarer's dole, a piece of bread and a cup of beer, which has been doled out to passing pilgrims since the Middle Ages. Now we're on the final approach to Southampton along the River Itchen. We've been walking for a week now, and I'm quite keen to get to the end. Arriving in Southampton, it's surprising to see how much of the old city walls still remain, and of course I have to have a bit of an explore. But finally we walk through the remains of the old town until we come to the end of the English Camino at God's House Tower. This is where I get my final passport stamp and exchange it for a certificate saying I've walked the English Camino. If I'd been a medieval pilgrim, this would have been just the first stage of my journey. But for me, the next question is, will I take the final steps across the sea and into Spain to complete my pilgrimage to Santiago?